Hello, Maya. I'm going to take a look at your 5 characteristics of light posting, give a little bit of feedback on what we're seeing. So we'll go ahead and screen share here, move us into position, and take a look. All right. First, very good job. You get your name on the posting. I know that sounds sort of strange that I'm highlighting that you put your name on it, but good job. Not everybody did. Let's take a look at direction. Okay, first of all, good. You've identified which position they are. That's an important part of what we're doing. Project specs are important. When there's instruction on how to do something in the professional world, you have to adhere to that pretty much to the letter. There's no variation in that. So excellent that you're doing that. So you're incorporating in many of these what we call the horizon. In other words, you've got this line that's showing up in just about all of them, and it establishes a landscape. And it's a good thing when you're using it effectively. I would say that most of these, however, are splitting the composition almost directly in two. You can see this falls just about right in the middle of the composition. This one's falling just about the middle of the composition. It's falling just about the middle of the composition. What I'm going to suggest is moving forward, as you decide about this horizon line, just about the middle of the composition, is that you move that. If you're going to be using that horizon line, let's vary it. Let's get it on either the bottom third or the upper third. It's going to create a much more dynamic starting point for you, as opposed to the right in the middle. It's going, that can kind of conflict. It creates what's called a dichotomy. In other words, it splits the upper and lower part of the composition, and automatically you're going to create a sort of a tension that may not necessarily be what you're looking for. So I'm going to suggest, as you move forward with new photography, if you're going to use that horizon line, in other words, the edge of the table or whatnot, let's position it in different places. That way it doesn't create that sort of center-aligned tension. Excellent use of some shadows hitting the back wall. I think that's very good. In some cases, you're using the entire picture frame effectively. In other cases, it looks like we're floating some objects a little bit in the middle. So we want to, again, be conscious of that. An image like this very well could have, you might not have seen this bit of information right here, and might not have seen this little lowering right here, because in a lot of cameras, you're not seeing the entire frame. You're maybe seeing 95% or 90% of the image. But when we have this little bit, and it's a minor thing, but we have these little bits, you see this little light right in here, those little bits can really interfere with the movement and interfere with the sort of integrity of a composition. It's almost like hearing someone play an instrument that's a little bit out of tune. So those things we want to pay attention to, observe them. We're not cropping our images in this class, but you do want to observe, and then for the next series, be sure that you're compensating for that. So if you're noticing objects that are showing up in your image that you didn't see, note that, so that next time you're moving in just slightly, going, I don't want that to be in the image. I'm going to take a centimeter closer, so that they don't show up. This gets a little bit blown out in terms of brightness, too bright, but not so much, I think, that it's overwhelming, but it could be a little bit darker. Good sense of direction, though. You're getting the sense of light happening here. I think this is probably one of the more effective compositions, where you're using the entire frame all the way from this side to this side, to the top, all the way down into the bottom. That's a good use of the entire picture plane. Very beautiful shadows on this one. This is quite exquisite. Although we could have taken a step closer and isolated the image here, and then a little bit over here and a little bit here, because the actual hero of the image is this interaction right in here. Right in here, and all of this space up here, and all this space over here, that's not really participating in your image. It's only taking away from it. So it's sort of like taking a little piece of food and putting it in a giant plate. You want to kind of avoid that. And so this image could really have been improved if you had been maybe, you know, I don't know, 5 or 6 centimeters closer. Let's look at your intensity. Intensity was adding the light. You have the direction light, which is your key. Then you add a fill light, which is always less intense, always darker, not affecting. Its job of the fill light is really to enrich the shadows, to really just to sort of slightly fill in those shadows. It's never meant to overwhelm the key. The key light still should be the dominant light source. So let's take a look. Very good in terms of direction. You can get this beautiful sort of sense of direction. And then that fill, which is coming from the other direction, kind of coming back in there, that's a good job. Usually you can tell that there are more than one light source because you've got multiple directions of shadows going in 2 different directions. So that is typically what you're going to see. I will say you've improved in terms of the compositions on intensity over direction. Direction, you're exploring. Here, you're getting closer, you're moving, you're still putting that horizon right in the middle. I'm going to guess why. It's because you weren't using your tripod. I think you were just setting the camera down on the table, which is giving you this unpleasant horizon line right in the middle of the composition. Use a tripod. We have extras in the class, so that'll help you to create variation. Yeah, right in the middle, we can avoid that. But the compositions are really improving here on this because you're using the entire picture plane. We're getting a sense of shape more so than in the first. All right, temperature, blue, 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 blue. Boy, you like that blue, right? And then we're these are a little bit one note, Maya. You know, we wanted to vary the light source. You're using 2 light sources in this exercise. One can be affected one way, the other way. Take a look at some of the students' other solutions. You probably already have because we've already done our peer review. And you'll see how you can create, you know, a variation. You can have shadows that are cool while highlights are warm, that type of thing. This is definitely showing evidence that you were exploring the variations of light, but I think they are a little bit sort of just like one note. It's blue, and then we just have blue photos. Varying that would have kind of explored more of the complexities of it. So I think while you did the technique, I think creatively we could have taken it a step further. Composition wise, we got some repetition going on here, the same photo basically over and over. We don't want that. We want to definitely vary those compositions each and every time throughout the series. Let's take a look at contrast. Now, contrast. Contrast is all about how many shades of gray are in between the light and the dark. So affecting contrast is about filling in or adding more grays via the reflector. So we have a reflecting object that's a white object, a white card, and it's bouncing light back in. You have one light source and you're bouncing light back in. The job there is to create variations of tone in between the darks and the lights. So let's see how we are doing here. So we are definitely getting variations in the lights and the darks, but you can see these images are overall relatively flat, and that wasn't really the idea. See, this is just sort of flat, and we don't have any variation really going on in there. And so I would say that these got away from you just a little bit here on these compositions. We're also seeing this shadow, and that's from your camera. Again, because it's sitting on the table, you're going to get this repeating shadow. Let's pay very close attention to those kinds of things because that's what's going to take your photography to the next level. It's not going to be the broad strokes as much as it's going to be some of these small details that you really want to focus on in the upcoming photo shoots. Yeah, they overall, they get a little bit flat, and that shouldn't be happening. We have one light and it's pointing in a direction, and then we're using a reflector that should just be basically supplementing those. So we may need to sit down and chat a little bit about what you were doing with these, because these are definitely going to need to be reevaluated in terms of what we're doing with that card. Let's take a look at hardness now. Now, hardness is about the shadows. Photography arguably is just as much about the shadows as it is the highlights. And so with hardness, the way we're dealing with it is to vary the shadows by diffusing one or more of the lights. So when we have one light diffused with a screen over it, it diffuses that light and creates a soft shadow. Then we have another light that is not diffused, it's just straight on, that creates a hard shadow. And so what we're looking for in this project, or this component of the project, is the variation of those. The shadows that are hard and shadows that are not hard. It creates this complexity in the shadow areas that really will create a rich environment, really. So let's take a look. Fill diffusion light. So this is, yeah, you're seeing evidence of that. You're seeing these hard shadows over here on the edges there. Hard shadows, and you're seeing some softened areas right over here where your fill is coming from. That's good. Diffuse both lights. You can see how soft these end up looking. That's proper. These images are a little bit flat still. I think they're underexposed. I think your camera settings may be sort of a little bit off here, because this is way too flat and gray to be a properly exposed photo. We'll look into that as we get back into the studio. But overall, in terms of the shadow areas, it looks like you're finding the right sort of combination of hard shadows versus soft shadows. Let's take a look at what your peers sort of have to say. Well, a good display of light in each photo, along with the intense shadows and the shapes. I would agree with that, other than maybe your intensity. I'm sorry, not intensity, your contrast. The contrast is just way too flat. We're going to need to relook at those. Direction section displayed some really nice compositions. Yep, bonus image was awesome. We enjoy the way you play with temperature settings on the lights in your camera. Yes, I mean, you definitely in the temperature settings, we're working with the various combinations. But as I had mentioned earlier, we're really looking for the kind of combination of those color variations that you could have taken another step forward. Well done on the hardness images. I would say yes. Well done on the hardness images. Compositions were interesting in that series. I agree. Let's see, pause your camera. They didn't really talk about the horizon line, but that was something that very few might have been sensitive to. I really want to encourage you on the next series to use that tripod. We have ones in the class for you to use. Use it. That setting the camera right on the table for every single photo like that created this horizon right in the middle of your image, which was not helping the dynamic sort of feelings within your composition. So let's break that up in the next series so that you have variations of where that line sort of falls. All right, you'll also receive sort of a numeric evaluation from me, but I thought these videos for everybody would be helpful just in terms of getting some recorded feedback. So look forward to seeing you make more images, and we will see you in the classroom. Bye-bye now.